The streets of Old Delhi, a pitched battle between Hindus and Sikhs.
Punjab in the 1980s wasn't just a battleground, it was a ticking time bomb. What started as political demands for Sikh rights spiraled into one of India's deadliest insurgencies, leaving over 25,000 people dead and an entire generation scarred. Armed militants, mass assassinations, hijackings, and a dramatic showdown inside the Golden Temple. This was no ordinary rebellion. How did a movement for autonomy turn into a violent struggle for a separate Sikh nation? How did the government respond with brutal force, leading to one of the most controversial military operations in Indian history? And most importantly, why does the idea of Khalistan still refuse to die today? Buckle up, because this is the real story of the Khalistan Insurgency, one the world was never meant to hear. Pinpointing the exact start of a secessionist movement is never easy, especially when its supporters argue that their cause is deeply rooted in history. This is the case with the Khalistan movement. While scholars generally place its timeline between 1981 and 1993, since that's when Punjab saw the most intense Sikh militancy, leading to over 25,000 deaths, the seeds of the movement were actually sown a few years earlier. One key event happened on April 13, 1978, during Baisakhi. A group of Orthodox Sikhs, mainly from the Akhand Kirtani Jatha, a Sikh sect emphasizing kirtan and discipline, and led by Sant Jarnail Singh Bhindranwale, protested outside the headquarters of the Sant Nirankari sect, a Sikh reformist movement promoting spirituality whom they considered heretics. The protest quickly turned violent, leaving 13 Orthodox Sikhs and 2 Sant Nirankaris dead. As expected, both sides tell different stories. Orthodox Sikhs claim they were peacefully protesting, while the Nirankaris insist they were attacked and had to defend themselves. The aftermath of this violence deepened the divide between Sikhs and Hindus, especially when an Indian court acquitted all 62 Nirankaris involved, including their leader, Baba Gurbachan Singh. Many Sikhs saw this as further proof of the Indian state's bias against them. This event also gave rise to Babar Khalsa, a militant group founded by Bibi Amarjit Kaur, the widow of one of the slain protesters. Originally formed to target the Sant Nirankaris, the group soon became deeply involved in the Khalistan movement, carrying out violent attacks against both Hindus and the Indian state. By 1981, tensions between Sikhs and Hindus in Punjab were clearly rising. Several key events fueled this divide. First, at a Sikh educational conference in March 1981, US-based speaker Ganga Singh Dhillon publicly stated that Sikhs were a separate nation and should have their own state. Though no official resolution was passed, the crowd erupted with slogans of Khalistan Zindabad. This raised suspicions in New Delhi about the true intentions of Sikh political leaders. Then, in September, veteran journalist Lala Jagat Narayan, an outspoken critic of the Khalistan movement, was assassinated by Sikh militants. Later that month, the Khalistani group Dal Khalsa hijacked an Indian Airlines plane, escalating tensions further. But perhaps the biggest issue was the central government's failure to address Sikh political demands, particularly those outlined in the Anandpur Sahib Resolution. Originally drafted in 1973, this resolution called for greater autonomy for Punjab, fair distribution of water resources, and the transfer of Chandigarh to Punjab. While its demands were mostly political, many Hindus saw them as separatist in nature, leading to further distrust. By 1982, frustration was mounting. The Akali Dal, led by Sant Harchand Singh Longowal, launched the Dharam Yudh Morcha, a mass protest movement demanding Sikh rights. The movement gained widespread Sikh support, even uniting different Akali factions and drawing in the increasingly influential preacher Sant Jarnail Singh Bhindranwale. Tensions reached a boiling point when, during the 1982 Asian Games in Delhi, Sikhs travelling from Punjab were blocked by Haryana police under orders from Chief Minister Bhajan Lal. This was justified as a security measure, but it left a deep sense of humiliation among Sikhs, who felt they were being treated as second-class citizens. Many saw it as further proof that the government did not trust them. Throughout 1983, the Akali Dal escalated their protests, staging roadblocks, rail disruptions, and strikes. But when these efforts failed to bring significant political concessions, more radical elements gained influence. Bhindranwale himself criticized the Akali leadership for using peaceful protests, arguing that begging won't get you anything unless you stand up to the government. By late 1983, violence had spiraled out of control. In October, Sikh militants stopped a Delhi-bound bus, separated Hindu passengers from Sikhs, and executed the Hindus on the spot. This brutal act was a turning point. Punjab's Chief Minister Darbara Singh resigned, and the central government imposed President's rule on October 10th, taking direct control of the state. Bhindranwale saw this as proof of anti-Sikh bias, stating, "When 6 Hindus are killed, the government falls. But when 200 Sikhs are gunned down by police, nothing happens. This shows that Hindu lives are more important to the government than Sikh lives." Despite imposing the president's rule, the government failed to curb the growing militancy. In fact, the Khalistani movement only gained more traction. At this point, moderate demands like the Anandpur Sahib resolution were no longer enough. Many militants declared that unless the resolution was fully implemented, Khalistan was the only solution. As one militant leader, Bibi Amarjit Kaur, put it, "If the centre wants peace in Punjab, they must fulfill our demands. If not, there will be Khalistan." By the end of 1983, Sant Bhindranwale had moved into the Akal Takht. It is the highest temporal authority in Sikhism and serves as the supreme seat of Sikh political and spiritual power, which is inside the Golden Temple complex. This was a big deal because it showed how much support he had among Sikhs at the time. It also made it clear that trying to divide people into moderates and extremists wasn't so simple. After all, Bhindranwale couldn't have taken up residence there without at least the silent approval of the Shiromani Gurdwara Parbandhak Committee, SGPC, and its leader Gurcharan Singh Tora. KPS Gill, who was Punjab's top police officer during the height of the violence, later said he didn't see much difference between the Akalis and the militants. In his view, the Akalis weren't really willing to take a firm stand against terrorism. By early 1984, with violence still raging across Punjab, many government officials and media figures openly called Bhindranwale the leader of the militants, accusing him of directing or inspiring militant attacks against Hindus. Then, on June 2, 1984, the central government decided to take drastic action. They completely sealed off Punjab from the rest of India, set up armed checkpoints at the borders, and imposed a media blackout. Over the next few days, the Indian Army carried out raids on more than 40 Gurdwaras suspected of sheltering militants or stockpiling weapons. The most dramatic of these was Operation Blue Star, June 3 to 6, 1984, when the army stormed the Golden Temple. The battle ended with the surrender of senior Akali leaders, the deaths of over 490 civilians and militants, including Bhindranwale, and the loss of 83 army personnel. This military operation shocked and angered Sikhs worldwide. Many felt deeply humiliated and even stopped identifying as Indian. Even though 4 of the 6 army generals leading the attack were Sikhs, it didn't ease the pain or resentment in the community, and things only got worse after that. Right after Blue Star, the government launched Operation Woodrose to track down remaining militants in rural Punjab. But in the process, many innocent Sikh youth were harassed, arrested and tortured. Some, fearing for their lives, fled to Pakistan, only to return later as trained Khalistani militants. Anger turned into a burning desire for revenge. Many believed Indira Gandhi, Prime Minister of India at that time, had crossed a line that couldn't be forgiven. Among them were her own Sikh bodyguards, Bent Singh and Satwant Singh, who decided to deliver justice themselves by gunning her down on October 31, 1984. Over the next 3 days, November 1st to 3rd, horrific anti-Sikh riots erupted across northern India, especially in Delhi. At least 2,200 Sikhs were brutally killed, and many compared the violence to the horrors of partition in 1947. For Sikhs, 1984 was a year of tragedy and betrayal. Operation Blue Star, Operation Woodrose, and the anti-Sikh riots left a deep wound. Many felt alienated from their Hindu neighbors and the Indian government like never before. Even today, these events remain a major reason why pro-Khalistan sentiment still exists in some circles. After Indira Gandhi's assassination, her son Rajiv Gandhi took over as Prime Minister and won a huge victory in the December 1984 elections. Early in his tenure, he seemed determined to find a political solution to the Punjab crisis. On March 11, 1985, he ordered the release of jailed Akali leaders, including Sant Longowal. This led to the Rajiv Longowal Accord, which attempted to address Sikh demands outlined in the Anandpur Sahib Resolution. However, the agreement was never fully implemented because some Akali factions, particularly Prakash Singh Badal, opposed it, calling it a sellout. Some analysts believe Congress abandoned the accord to avoid losing support in other parts of India, especially in the Hindi-speaking regions, where it could be seen as favoring minorities. On August 17, 1985, Rajiv Gandhi announced elections in Punjab, signaling an end to the president's rule. Despite militant threats urging people to boycott the vote, and even after Sant Longowal's assassination, the elections went ahead successfully, with a strong voter turnout of 67.58%. The Shiromani Akali Dal, Longowal, led by Surjit Singh Barnala, won the majority of seats in the Punjab Assembly for the first time, though their vote share was only slightly higher than Congress, 38.6% versus 37.9%. However, any hope for stability quickly faded. The Barnala government struggled to control militancy, and when the central government failed to transfer Chandigarh to Punjab as promised, it further weakened their position. On January 26, 1986, the very day Chandigarh was supposed to be handed over, a massive gathering of Sikhs at the Golden Temple installed a pro-militant Jathedar leader and announced the formation of a 5-member Panthic committee to work towards an independent Khalistan. This committee included the Khalistan Commando Force, KCF, led by Wasan Singh Zafarwal, which became a major force in the pro-Khalistani insurgency. Just a few months later, on April 29, 1986, they issued the Declaration of Khalistan from the Golden Temple. The government responded immediately with Operation Black Thunder 1, sending in security forces to flush out militants. Unlike Operation Blue Star, this raid didn't cause much damage to the temple, but it was largely ineffective. Punjab's top cop, Julio Ribeiro, admitted that they only managed to capture a few minor militants. The real damage, however, was political. Since Chief Minister Barnala had approved the operation, his credibility among Sikhs took a massive hit. At that time, many in the community were still sympathetic to the militants, and his involvement in the raid made him look like a puppet of the central government. In May 1987, KPS Gill took over as the Director General of Police DGP in Punjab, replacing Julio Ribeiro. One of his first major moves was launching Operation Black Thunder 2, another raid on the Golden Temple. Unlike previous operations, this one was conducted openly, with full media coverage. It was a major success for Gill. Militants surrendered without much resistance, which severely damaged their image and boosted the morale of the Punjab police, who played a leading role this time. Despite this success, Punjab's situation remained unstable. On June 11, 1987, after 20 months in power and more than 1,000 lives lost to insurgency, the Barnala government was dismissed and President's rule was reimposed. Over the next few years, militancy only intensified, worsened by the release of Sikh prisoners, known as the Jodhpur Détenus, in 1988, and the continued flow of well-armed militants returning from Pakistan. The influence of militants in Punjab wasn't limited to violence, it extended into everyday life. Groups like the Khalsa Panchayats began resolving village disputes, effectively replacing government institutions in some areas. By early 1991, during the peak of the insurgency, reports suggested that in parts of rural Punjab, especially near the border, militants weren't just running a parallel government, they were the government. In contrast to the Indian government's portrayal of them as terrorists, some militants gained local support by cracking down on social problems like alcoholism and drug addiction. However, as time went on, their image suffered. Many resorted to extorting money from civilians, carrying out random killings, and even committing rape and forced marriages. Some Khalistan supporters argue that these actions were carried out by government infiltrators or black cats planted to discredit their movement. Dr. Paramjit Singh Ajrawat, a US-based Khalistani leader, claimed that after Operation Black Thunder the Senu, the Indian government sent disguised agents, posing as Sikhs with long beards, into the community to commit violent acts, extort money and spread fear, all in an effort to suppress the movement for Khalistan. While it's true that the government did infiltrate militant groups, it would be misleading to blame all criminal actions on these infiltrators alone. In the end, the Khalistan movement collapsed due to a mix of factors: the moral decline of many militants, internal rivalries, the rejection of violence by ordinary Punjabis, and the brutal counterinsurgency tactics of KPS Gill's Punjab police all played a role. After years of rising violence, the number of deaths from militant attacks and counter-terror operations peaked in 1991 at 5,265, before falling to 3,883 in 1992, and then dropping dramatically to just 871 in 1993. On February 25, 1992, President's rule in Punjab was lifted for the last time. The state elections followed soon after, but with most factions of the Shiromani Akali Dal boycotting, voter turnout was just 24.3%. Unsurprisingly, the Congress Party won a landslide victory, securing 87 of the 117 seats in the Punjab Legislative Assembly. By 1993, Khalistani militancy had been reduced to isolated incidents, the most significant being the assassination of Punjab Chief Minister Bhindranwale Singh in 1995. While the idea of Khalistan has not disappeared entirely, it no longer holds a major place in mainstream Punjabi politics. Similarly, the Anandpur Sahib Resolution and the Rajiv Longowal Accord have become largely irrelevant to political discourse. Reflecting on the years of insurgency, Tarlochan Singh, a retired statesman and former member of the Rajya Sabha, offered a sobering assessment. He noted that while many policemen and soldiers lost their lives, the government itself suffered no real losses. Instead, the greatest damage was borne by the Sikh community. An entire generation of young men was lost. He lamented that those who took up arms in the name of Sikhism ultimately harmed their own people, fostering suspicion about Sikh loyalty in the rest of India, a perception that lingers even today. This video has provided a concise overview of the key events of the Khalistan militancy from 1981 to 1993. However, the roots of the conflict go deeper, arguably all the way back to the partition of India. Partition not only set a precedent for religious-based separatism, but also weakened India's secular foundation. Thank you for watching our YouTube channel, Typographic Man. Don't forget to like and subscribe.